Hi, listeners. Producer Torin here with a quick note up top that the 5th anniversary of this podcast you're listening to, Oops, Your Culture's Showing, is rapidly approaching in late March 2023, which we're very excited about. And to commemorate that, we're starting up a YouTube channel. Every Wednesday through late March, we are dropping 2, maybe occasionally 3, episodes of the pod to this point in the order they were released. They are on YouTube for you to enjoy if you haven't listened to them yet, or to re-enjoy if you have. The link to it's in the show notes. So after, or maybe even before you hear this episode that you're about to listen to, go start up the playlist of episodes there to hear every random grammar time segment thus far, or every I didn't mean to interrupt, or there's a cultural piece to this statement. And of course, all of Dean's knowledge of global cultures in the order that all that arrived into this world over these last 5 years. And after that, maybe tell a friend who hasn't listened to the pod about it while you're at it. We would very much appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy our episodes thus far up on YouTube, and also enjoy this episode starting right now.
Dean, you brought in a whole thing of grapes.
Grapes. A big bowl of grapes.
Big bowl of grapes.
Yes.
Lovely, cold grapes that were very wonderful and refreshing.
We needed a little refreshment, a little
boost.
snack.
It hit the spot.
And so there's still many of them left in the bowl.
Right.
And we all took part, but we didn't eat them all. And
there's a significant amount left.
we could, because they were real good. Good grapes. But we didn't eat them all. And that's kind of where we're going with this podcast today, to a degree. Where we're going with
Talking
the
about
podcast
grapes?
today. Talking about grapes, because
Well,
grapes...
I brought them out actually because I don't particularly like grapes.
That is very U.S. citizen of you, actually. Yeah, eat all you want. It's fine.
It's like regifting.
I don't care. They make me sick anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like regifting.
See, that's another subject, and we will get to that, because I don't...
Sure.
But most of the time, I don't see anything wrong with regifting. But
I think we did talk about
to
that.
your point, and I'm
I haven't even made a point here.
I'm joking about. No, I don't like grapes. I love grapes.
Yes.
Good.
I do.
Good,
Because
because
I know you're an avid fan.
the grape...
Your point about the grapes,
Except the
Tom.
grapes of wrath. That's another story right there. But
No,
and actually, I love the grapes
Yeah,
of
it's
wrath.
great.
It's a wonderful story.
Yeah, it is.
The grapes
It's
of
a
wrath
sad
is a great story, and grapes are great.
And grapes are great. So if you
The
happen to be
point
a
of
grape
your-
person, don't yell at us, or go ahead and yell at us. We don't care.
We can't hear
you. Nah.
So I shared the grapes. I
You
was
shared the
attempting
grapes.
to share the grapes.
And we
Thank
did
you.
not consume them like, just gulping them all down.
So, like, if instead of grapes, if they were a plate of really delicious, warm, homemade cookies.
Uh-huh. I would have eaten them all.
Yeah, immediately.
No, yeah.
Not if, and here's the cultural piece, right? Because there's a cultural piece to this.
I know there is.
It depends on the culture.
What?
Do you come from a culture where it says everybody has the right to just grab for themselves?
You may be referring to something that I happened to read and sent off, and we talked about a little bit and thought, hey, you know what?
This would be cool to talk about because it's an important issue, I think,
I think it is.
for U.S. Americans and for all cultures.
Absolutely. And there was an article on bigthink.com that was not that long ago, and it's written by a person by the name of Johnny Thompson, who I do not know Johnny, but wrote this article. And it's about a point in culture of Lagom. Am I saying that correctly, Torrin?
You are.
Okay.
Yes, I
Lagom?
believe.
And we're talking about this because, oops,
Your culture's showing.
And you're Tom Peterson,
I am. And you're Dean Foster.
and we have Torin in the studio with us.
We do.
Hello.
We do.
And this is a cultural issue. This Lagom,
Lagom.
It's a Swedish cultural concept,
Yes.
but it exists throughout most of Scandinavia and other countries as well in different forms.
See, now at first when I heard that, when I heard the actual word, I immediately thought it was the strange little creature who was trying to get the ring from Frodo in Lord of the Rings.
Him too.
I see.
Lagom.
But my precious. But it turned out, no, not even close. Because that'd be greedy. And that is not Lagom.
Not Lagom.
That's
No,
true.
no.
That's a non-Lagom, anti-Lagom,
So
unlagom.
what is Lagom? Lagom is
Wordplay. Sorry.
it's the idea that there's a Goldilocks zone for everything. How you live your life,
Okay.
and also what you do at any given moment in your life. And if there's too much of something, that's not good. If there's too little, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's just enough,
Just enough.
and just enough for everybody,
Right.
that's Lagom.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sounds
You-
great.
It
you
is
made-
nice.
You made a judgment about that.
Yeah, I think that's
It
very
seems
nice.
to be
That sounds
nice.
delightful.
But
And-
it's not, I mean, we're all from the United States. And
The three of us.
the three of
Yes.
us, yeah. And it's not really the base of our culture. Our culture is very much on more. I want more. I need to get more, and more is an accomplishment, and more is better. Bigger is better.
More is better, which
More
is
is
why
better.
it was revolutionary most
Mhm.
recently when the idea actually came out that said less is more. Right?
Right.
It-
Right.
That's a little bit of the influence of Lagom.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah.
And I see that in US culture where there is now concern for this concept,
Right.
where less is more, not more is more. And I think we're probably going to see more of that as scarcity becomes a real issue. To
It
face
is an issue.
in the 21st century.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a slow go, and it's going to be a painful go in a culture like the US, which fundamentally I don't think is set up for this idea of accepting Lagom.
No, for no other reason than we are a capitalist society, and therefore we are trying to make money and survive and keep it going, and a lot of that has a basis from the early days when you had to get the thing going. You
Well,
had to make it work.
consumerism is the mantra in the U.S.
Right,
It has
right.
been ever since the beginning, and it's just become exponential as the culture wore on. So now we live extremely consumerist.
And we
kind
do,
of
and
life.
we worship to some degree. We worship the accomplishment and the collection of stuff.
Exactly.
And bigger and mine is faster and bigger and shinier and costs more. And how much did he pay for that? And
So
and
the
so
question
on.
then becomes: is it coming to a screeching halt as we approach questions of scarcity and inequity, or is this going to be a slow grind where a lot of people, including those who are making big profit off of consumerism, eventually have to start to change tracks, simply because there's no way to sustain this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it seems very much in this country that it is in the U.S. that it is like it would be much more like turning the Queen Elizabeth II ship.
Right. So it's kind of remarkable that we're even having this conversation now.
Absolutely.
About this, right?
But it's been a different kind of couple of years. Does that make?
Yeah,
does
the
that
pandemic.
do it? We're,
This may be generational too. I mean,
Could
we
be.
may have
Yeah,
the current generation, Torin, your generation,
Yeah.
pushing this a lot
I'm a
faster.
millennial. I'm an elder millennial.
an elder millennial.
elder millennial. Wasn't he a preacher in the South at
I
one
think
point?
so. Yes.
Elder
right.
millennial
Or from Utah. I
from
think.
Utah. Well,
As they are.
he'd be out of Utah, of course. Yes. Anyway, sure. Yeah, that's very possible. Could be generational. So, but does it have staying power?
Well,
in
that's
a
always the
country
question.
Like this?
And when you look at cultural studies, and that's a really important point.
Yeah.
If you look at anything that's happening in any given moment, that event has profound. It looks like it's going to be profoundly influential on the culture in general, going down years from then.
Mhm.
So right now we've gone through COVID, and we're looking at scarcity issues, and we're saying, "Wow, this is big stuff. This is going to change everything." Well,
Right.
the reality is that once the moment passes,
Mhm.
it probably has some effect on the culture. But if what's happening or what needs to be done isn't really resonant with the fundamental cultural DNA of the culture,
Right.
Yeah.
it usually doesn't happen to the degree that you think it will, if at all.
Right.
And I'm not seeing anything in U.S. culture, fundamental U.S. culture that resonates with the idea of Lagom?
Yeah,
Right.
I see little things. Like one example that just came to mind was with soda, where you start to see like Coke Zero sugar, but that's been a process over a long time, right? So I feel like
Yes.
it's like you're saying, it takes a long time to start turning the ship in any particular.
And I don't know if
direction in
if the ship
culture.
is turning. It's
Right.
still consumerism. It's
Right.
still just getting you to buy something else.
It's not the thing, right?
You
But
know?
it's playing
and
towards.
You're going to have a lot of this, but it has zero sugar, so. But maybe you don't feel like you're going too as overboard if you're doing that. You can have a lot, but you're not. It doesn't feel too much.
Now, if we can monetize Lagom,
Right.
Well,
then
that may be
Yeah.
that may be
Well,
a
that's
version
right.
of it right
that
there.
may be the way the U.S. gets it done,
Mhm.
Right.
right? And
But in order to
And-
monetize it, they're going to have to change approaches to things. For instance, in the article, Johnny mentions a thing about exercise, and I can relate to this. My personality with exercise has always been that I've always been an athletic, and I've always exercised throughout my life, and I continue to, and except that I have to be careful because I have a tendency to overdo it.
Mhm.
And then
so there's the overdoing piece.
absolutely, and then I'm back to almost not square one, but I'm back to not doing it for a long period of time because now I've injured myself, I've pulled something, I've just burned out on it, and so I stop.
So why did you do it to such an extreme? Because Lagom would say, don't do that. It's going to hurt your body. And a lot of people get into this in exercise,
Mm-hmm.
and the Iron Man thing and the prove yourself
Yes.
to yourself or to others. That starts to play into some elements of U.S. culture that are very much a part of our fundamental cultural DNA, where I can go out there and prove myself to myself and to others that I can do these extraordinary things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a wonderful thing to do every once in a while, maybe.
Every once in a while,
but not as a daily living style, right?
Yeah.
Well-
Although I would say, I guess, because it seems like a fundamental element of Lagom is satisfaction, right? Is doing what
Right.
satisfies you, and not feeling the need to push beyond that, right? So I guess it depends on who you are.
And what is your satisfaction
If
level?
going out and running a marathon every month satisfies you, great, do it. But if you're just doing it because you feel like I have to do it, then you're gonna get burned out. You're gonna hurt yourself,
Right.
Or if it's going and running a 5K once every couple months, or not running at all, right? So I mean, I know, Dean, you've kind of experienced Lagom in action in your travels
in other cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. Well, I think it's more than just what satisfies you, because if what only satisfies you is pushing you to the top and doing these extraordinary things that are actually uncomfortable, hurtful, difficult, that's not Lagom. Right. So you really have the definition is more subtle than that. It's there's got to be an element of comfort and ease to it that can be replicated in daily lifestyle all the time. Not that if you do it, you're going to burn out or you're going to hurt yourself. Right. And so that's got to be a piece of it. And so it's more than just, you can't justify it by saying, well, it just makes me feel good to be burning out all the time.
But what if you're comfortable running a marathon every, right? I mean,
but or even if it's not that, even if it's because there's people who go out and work out in the gym, and I mean I'm not talking about sustaining health. I'm talking about bodybuilding and all that kind of stuff. And when I mean I've never gotten to that point. It's quite obvious if you see me, but it's a situation that I've seen others and known people who have done this and spoken to them, and to them this is fulfilling. I would use the word comfort. There's a comfort in it to them.
Well, I'm not going to judge, right? I mean, who am I to judge?
Of course you will.
Who am I to judge? but I wouldn't be surprised if that would strike in most people in cultures where Lagom is fundamental to their cultural DNA, if they would
That would be
strike them
excessive.
as odd and excessive.
And extraordinary.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that would,
I can see that.
and I think that says more about cultures that do that,
Mm-hmm.
and the absence of Lagom as part of the
Yeah.
as part of their cultural reality.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, the whole Danish idea, and this isn't Swedish, it's not Lagom, but the whole Danish idea of, and I know I'm going to mispronounce this because I don't speak Danish,
Mhm.
but hygge,
Oh, yeah.
you know, there was a whole fad of it for a while,
Right.
and it became a consumerist thing, and it became
Mhm.
very much monetized, and
Yeah.
people made money
Oh,
over
absolutely.
Right.
trying to bring it to the U.S.
Right, because there's wellness movements.
Right,
So it
wellness
became,
movements
you know, a big part of
and you know, buying
stuff.
cozy socks and things like that.
Sure.
And hygge is all about cozy.
Yeah.
It's about just kind of living comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to go over the top. You don't have to always be looking for the grand night out or the big party.
Mm.
You can be home, sitting in a comfy chair with your cat and your big heavy socks in the snowstorm in front of the fire. You know, which sounds kind of
Sounds lovely.
very cool.
I'm
right?
on board.
Yeah.
And it's not just that it's not
Maybe
over
not
the
cat.
top.
Mm,
It's
the cat.
also that it's comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's not putting strain
Mm.
on what you do.
Mm.
And you know, I'm thinking of a Dutch version of this because I've experienced it very, very profoundly. I think the Dutch pronounce this, and again, I don't speak Dutch, so I'm going to get this wrong. But gezellig, when life is gezellig, it's easy, it's comfortable, it's relaxed. I just don't see anybody working out every day in the gym with that approach to what they're doing.
Right.
You
Okay.
know?
Sure.
Even though they'll say, "Oh, this is what satisfies me."
Right.
So,
But yeah,
it's-
satisfies versus cozy is those
Yeah,
are
it's
two
different.
That's
those are
different.
things.
Yes. It's they use in the article. He uses a and I'm using the pronoun he, and I hope I'm not offending. They use an example of being in like out at a pub or a bar and being with some friends and sitting and having a few drinks, but just a few, and you're sitting and you're having good conversation and you're talking about things, and then over comes someone else from that you know, and they've got a tray full of shots of liquor
Yeah.
that they're introducing to the whole thing. Here we go, you know,
and the social pressure to drink it and take the shot.
And that all
There's a lot of
rises.
pressure. Right.
but now and then of course that leads to another round, and
right.
and now you've got people who are clearly drunk and
Very
not
quickly.
and then eventually not feeling well, and so on and so forth, and it kind of referencing that as a thing, that decision to not do that,
Yeah, right.
to find that middle bed of the
And
three
it's
bears,
tough, especially
you
when
know?
there's the peer pressure element. It's tough to go.
Absolutely.
No, I'm
And-
going to be the only one not to do it.
And
Yes.
when there's consumerist messages to take things
Right.
over the top,
Plays into that.
to always, you know, push the envelope,
Mm.
to do it more than anybody else,
Right.
and that you deserve to be the number
Sort of
one,
a cultural pressure.
right? That you can do
Mhm.
this more than anybody else. You can have this more than anybody
Yeah.
else.
It's infused in
Yes.
US culture,
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And
Oh, it's
I-
a goal.
I remember
Yeah.
one time I was in Amsterdam, and it was a beautiful Saturday. I had been doing some work there during the week, and I had Saturday and Sunday before I had to return back to the States, and everybody was outside. Everyone was just lounging in the streets, on their boats in the canals, hanging out by the coffee shops, hanging out by the bars and pubs, and everyone was having a really good social time.
Hmm.
It wasn't a scene, quote unquote. And when I say a scene, I'm thinking back on if we were all trying to have a social time on the streets of New York, my city, it would look very different. The vibe would be different.
Mhm.
This was much more relaxed. This was much more low key, and people were just enjoying each other's company, not looking to get as drunk as fast as possible,
Right.
or to do something, or to be the first one to do something outrageous, and And I was thinking, how unique that this is happening here, and everyone is in this spirit, as opposed to the other kind of spirit.
You know, when you were talking about the streets and what you saw and so on, it conjured up a picture for me of a time back, and it led me to think about the technology and things like that. And what I mean by that is this: in the days around in the United States, in the days, let's say, in the 1940s, early 1950s,
Back when you were
non-existent. That's funny. That's clever.
Oh, no, I was just asking.
He's not going to be with us any longer. And
remove him.
Are you in the position to make that decision?
I think I just did.
Apparently. Good to know.
When at any rate, they baseball was a very big sport in this country. Mm-hmm. It's still a big sport in this country, but there's other sports that are in competition with it now, and it really was the king sport in the country at the time. And it was very common that throughout the country, and it could be on the stoops of New York City in Brooklyn, or it could be out in Kansas. People would sit with a radio and listen to these games and things for long periods of time, and enjoying the surroundings, the people they were doing it with, or maybe people who were walking by, or those types of things. Now, that's not to say those things don't happen now to some degree, but think about it a little bit, and kind of going back to the generational thing. I will now dispute the generational concept in that. You got to have the bigger phone. You got to have the better phone, and
right.
and that's generational, and it's younger,
and that's happening because of consumerism.
Absolutely, but that's
right.
the driving force behind everything we're talking about
right.
in the United States.
Also, start to see more emphasis on wellness because there's so many options out there, and it's so easy to be in excess. Right? You binge watching.
This is
right?
a country.
You can sit and watch
options,
millions of shows and not leave your house.
Absolutely,
right?
And that was the thing that pandemic brought us. Yeah. Is that better or not?
If Lagom can be monetized, it'll become part of the culture to some degree. And to what degree, I'm not sure. But if it can't be monetized, it ain't going to happen.
Right.
Not in the U.S.
No.
I don't think.
I agree. I think it would be a big leap.
I think the difference is what's the purpose of whatever it is you're doing. If the purpose is to socialize and have a good time, how do you define that? For the Dutch, they're going to define it as kind of the way I described it, right?
Yeah.
And the Swedes are going to do it that way too. Not too much, not too little. Mm-hmm. And our goal is to have a good time. If we have too much, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
Right.
If we have too little, it's not going to be fun.
Right.
But just enough.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
And I don't think that that's the goal necessarily when when U.S. Americans get together to party. There may be a whole lot of other things.
Usually not, I would say, probably.
Yeah. So I think that's the distinguishing difference. Mm-hmm. Now, for me, one of the things that's interesting is why do we have these cultural differences around this idea? And I think it's tied to something that we've spoken about many times before, which is this very strong individualist ethic in the United States, where individuals have are empowered to try to do for themselves, even at the expense of others.
Right.
Right. And that is not part of the cultural DNA in Scandinavia or in the Netherlands. It's just the opposite, in fact, where if individuals become too individualistic at the expense of others, then they are not rewarded for it. In fact, society takes very strong steps not to reward that. And so you have what are referred to. These are all interestingly egalitarian cultures, where the expression of anything that makes you number one is looked down upon. It's frowned upon. And in the U.S., anything you can do to make yourself look like number one is exactly what you want to do. So I think there's a connection here between this idea of not too much and not too little, and the role of individualism and more collectivist ways of thinking about how we should exist with each other.
Yeah, that
And
makes a lot of sense.
I saw this in Stockholm once when I was working with a group of Swedish engineers, and they were all working on a team, and their manager was with them in the room, and I was there, and we were trying to talk about the different ways that we could approach working with colleagues in other cultures. And I understood where the Swedish team, how the Swedish team organized itself. And I didn't expect the manager of this team to take a hands-on role in making decisions for the team. Now, I knew that conceptually because Lagom, and because in Swedish culture, this collectivist idea diminishes the role of any one individual. So even if you have the rank as a Swedish manager, you're in charge of the team. That doesn't mean you make decisions for the team. It means you facilitate the team's decision making. And the Swedish manager, a good Swedish manager, facilitates the decision making by the team. They don't make the decision. And I'm sitting there and we're running into issues. People have different ideas. So there's a little bit of conflict. Sven says one thing and Helga says something else. And I'm expecting, because I'm a US American, the manager to jump in and kind of like make a decision. And that's not happening. And I'm feeling, and now I should have been reflecting on this because this was a perfect example of Lagom and collectivist decision making. But this guy just didn't say anything and waited for the team to, how can I describe this? It was like this ineffable solution finding with everybody giving everybody else the respect they needed to say what they needed to say. And if it made sense and if it was rational, we would accept it. And the manager simply confirmed what he believed the team had decided. And I thought this was an unbelievable expression that could, this whole process would never have happened in a meeting in the U.S.
Right.
Just
No, that's hard to
never
imagine.
would have happened.
Most likely
US.
not. Yeah, most likely not. Okay. So let me, since it's kind of my job here, let me ask some.
Are you the manager?
Yeah. You
No.
taking control?
Yeah.
Who's in control here?
I'm in control, for crying out loud.
Oh, boy.
When we're
So you're going to
we
try
are
to
in the U.S.
You're going to try to get your way here.
Leave some control
I am
for the
going to
rest
try
of
to get
us.
my way because otherwise it's a snore fest here. All right?
Excessive control over there.
It's if what I'm thinking of. I'm trying to think of it in terms of. See, I'm seeing our definition of lagom. Hopefully, I'm
Lagom.
Lagom. Sorry. Of lagom as a
Legume is a peanut.
And it's an English word.
Sort of. Okay, yeah, we'll go with it. Is that wordplay? Wordplay.
That was definitely wordplay.
Let go of my legume. It doesn't belong to
Speaking
you.
of consumerism.
I went swimming in the lagoon, I think. More wordplay.
Yes.
And I have no idea what I was going to say.
I don't know.
It probably wasn't
You're in
important
control,
anyway.
apparently.
Yeah, I guess I am.
That's what you say.
It's very unfortunate, I think.
Well.
It's okay. So but a collective society, Japan would be a collective society.
Collectivist, yes.
Okay. If in Japan, and I can be 100% wrong here, I think I'm maybe 30% wrong. In the corporate world, it's very much the collective society, very much the way they're doing things, and but now if off hours out celebrating out at a bar afterwards, which is not uncommon in the corporate world in Japan. Excess tends to be more.
Oh, yes. I didn't say that Lagom is not a Japanese concept.
No,
It's
I
a
know
Swedish
that.
concept.
But what I'm
Okay,
saying, but I'm
so-
saying, I'm tying it in with the collectivism.
But,
Well-
so it's
saying to
not
say-
like automatically tied to
Yeah, I'm just trying to
collectivist
define it
cultures.
more.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah, and
Because I'm
I-
wondering if it's not a social capitalism, socialism thing as strongly as the collective.
Well, I think you're onto something, Tom.
Yeah.
It may not be as strictly related to the individualist collectivist issue as I was making it sound. There may be other elements to it, and I think Japan gives us
Sure.
an alternate to that.
Okay.
But Japan is far more consumerist than Sweden.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you do have, coming out of a Lagom collectivist culture like Sweden,
Which is also socialist.
at which you do have the economic system
Yeah.
that comes out of that sensibly,
Mhm.
rationally. Yeah, it's going to be socialist. It's not going to be as consumerist,
Right.
right? If those are the cultural bases, then we're going to create an economic system that's going to be much more socialist. Make sure everybody gets a shot at the cookie
Yeah.
before the cookies are taken by one person.
Right.
Right?
Mm.
But in
Okay.
Japan,
Good.
it's
See how he tied that back? That was
Yeah,
very
that was
good.
very good.
But in Japan, that isn't part of it. Okay, it is
Right.
consumerist, it is capitalist,
Yeah.
and the issue that you're bringing up in Japan is not part of what we see in Sweden, which is the Japanese cultural requirement to speak openly and directly
Mm-hmm.
and honestly
Mm.
in all circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So because we cannot do that in Japan, we have to go out and get drunk at night so
Hmm.
that we can say to each other what we really mean.
Ah.
And because we can't do that when we're in the office during the day together.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's the cultural piece for Japan that is not the case in Sweden.
Mm.
In Dutch culture, in Swedish culture, in Scandinavian culture, it's all about being very clear, very direct, saying what you mean, and you don't have to be rude about it, but you do be practical and
Mhm.
be clear and say what you mean.
Okay.
In fact, their complaint about U.S. Americans is that we kind of beat around the bush around that. We're more Japanese,
Yeah.
right? And their complaint about the Japanese is that they're really Japanese. And
Right.
nobody should speak like that. It makes no sense. Why do you not say what's on your mind if you're dealing with a business issue that has to be dealt with?
Well, it's the thing you've said many, many times about the cultures viewing the other cultures through their own baggage.
That's
Through
right.
their own lens.
That's
right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in Sweden, we've got a very direct speaking culture where we do say what we mean. In the Netherlands, the same thing.
Yeah.
Direct, clear, precise in order to move things along. And you don't hold back. So we don't have the need to go out and get totally drunk in order to say something that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
In Japan, yeah, you do have that need.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And that's the difference there.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think you raised an important point that Japan is much more consumerist than Sweden. Sweden is socialist.
Yeah.
Again, because of this collectivist, Lagom-oriented fundamental to Swedish society.
And staying with that for that, and it works in that situation. And I think I do think that there is, you talk about when you have major things like the pandemic come through the world, and obviously it's going to make changes. It's going to turn things around to some degree. But when the glacier of the pandemic comes and it slowly pulls back, as the glaciers did, they left rocks all around.
A little change.
Yeah.
Some change. Right.
So some
Yeah.
change,
Yeah.
and where those changes will come and how they'll impact us
We'll see.
is still up in the air.
Yeah.
We're throwing that around still. So who knows how long it'll take us to figure that out. But there's other aspects with it too, because not only the pandemic, but we have climate change on top of us.
we have the pressures of
There's a deadline.
unsustainability.
Yeah.
There's a deadline here.
Yeah, and
Right.
and in the word
Excess
dead,
cost.
dead is a key line there, part of the line.
Yeah.
Yes, and so that could be, that could take the Queen Elizabeth too, and start to turn it around a lot faster,
Right.
Right, out of necessity.
or not, because you ignore the fact that there's an iceberg.
Sure.
And if you ignore the iceberg,
We've sure done a lot of ignoring. Uh-huh.
and-
My fear is that in an individualist culture, there isn't going to be anything that compels those who continue to benefit from this
Yes.
to do otherwise.
Well, as we record this in 2022, we have gone through a series of weather anomalies, not necessarily completely different than anything that's been experienced before, but definitely different aspects of it. Drought
Right.
and other areas just flooded with monsoon-like rain. Now, that's also happening in other parts of the world because it is, the scientists tell us, this is climate change.
Right.
And
with this coming out in 2023, I'm sure that's still continuing.
I would be hoping it wouldn't
get
be
bigger and bigger.
but I think that would be silly to think it wouldn't.
Mhm.
It may be even worse by
So
that
we
time.
all need a good dose of Lagom.
And
Not too much.
the world as a whole,
Mhm.
the Earth could use a little,
Mhm.
and I think there's another thing. So is that going to do it? And can you do that and have the newest and greatest iPhone? Can you do that? And can you do that? And because it's clearly you have to think. I'm not saying you can't have that. I'm not saying you don't want it. But is this something when we talk about it? Is it a full culture thing, or is it something that is even within cultures? Is it
Well, I think
mini
all
cultures,
yeah,
subcultures?
Yeah, I think all cultures have their privileged elites and
Yeah.
their non-privileged.
Yeah.
And
But is the
privilege-
goal here to be the privileged elite? Is it? I don't have an answer for that one. So
if the privileged elites can continue to live the way they want while others suffer the consequences,
yeah,
then those kinds of inequities will continue.
yeah,
Now, if we decide as a society that we can't do that anymore, then it will change.
right.
In a culture like Sweden, the idea of privileged elites and non-privileged elites is not the collectivist ideal.
Right.
The whole idea there is everybody should have should be able to take one cookie from the plate.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So I've eaten during this while you were talking. I
You
ate
ate
all
all
the
the
other grapes.
You ate
Oh,
all
no.
the grapes.
Empty bowl over there.
Oh no!
Uh-huh. And I'm not feeling too well.
Well, because that's what happens when you have too much.
Oh, I see.
We're trying to tell you.
Oh no. Oh, no.
And maybe we should have. Did you have a Lagom Thanksgiving,
Well,
or was it all about
Yeah.
eating as much turkey as you possibly could?
No. I would say
You
honestly,
stuffed yourself silly.
I think yes. Well, I can't really remember because I was so drunk. Um, no.
Precisely.
And I was sitting next to Uncle Louie. Oh,
I remember Uncle Louie.
yeah.
Right,
well,
right.
people have been following along.
I'd
here.
rather forget about Uncle Louie.
Well, listen. The logom of our podcast says not too
right.
short, not too long.
But we
Right.
had a wonderful gezellig time.
There's a
didn't we?
good
Didn't we?
amount of just enough time.
Yes.
Yep.
I think.
I think.
So-
I mean, you all will be the judge.
Yeah.
listeners.
Well, I think we're lying in the
Goldilocks
the
zone?
Goldilocks
I think
bed.
we're there.
That's
Yeah.
just right.
I think
Yeah.
so. I agree.
Not too hard, not too soft, just right.
Now what are
And
we talking about?
Don't ask. Just halfway through that, I thought this is not good.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
You know, astronomers have this.
we're sponsored by certain pharmaceuticals.
They have this. The Earth is in a Goldilocks zone. We're not
Yeah.
too close to the sun.
Right.
We're not
Just
too far
well,
away
as-
from
That's
the sun.
right,
Plant
exactly
which
Which
right.
is why life is sustainable.
And that's what
And
they're
so
trying to find
precious.
other planets that fall into that.
so there's
Yep.
a metaphor here for what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So-
Well, the other thing is, and that is and part of it too, is I think there's the kind of feeling by humans that that we will ruin the planet, and we very well could. However, I got a belief that the planet has its own lagom style, which is if you do too much to us, we will get rid of you. And then the next group will come along
Oh,
because
Earth will
we
go-
will revert back very fast.
Earth will go on. Earth is doing
Oh,
what
yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
It's people who may disappear.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And when the people figure out that it's us on the walking the plank, then maybe we'll do something. Unfortunately, it also may be when the plank breaks and we all fall into the
Yeah.
ocean.
Again, we gotta get the.
So that's fun.
We gotta get the ship, moving a little quicker.
Swinging around
Swinging
here.
around. Yeah, thank you.
It's just
A little
like
quicker.
analogy hell here.
You all know what I'm talking about.
Analogy
Oh,
hell.
no, not analogy hell.
Oh, it's a new segment. And
Some demon.
on that note,
Analogy
let's
hell.
switch over here to you, Dean.
I'm stunned. I'm sitting here stunned.
I think we're in excess now.
Way
We've gone
beyond.
too far.
At the excessive
Ridiculousness.
inability to stay on topic.
So let me
Got off the
quickly.
plank.
Let me quickly.
Oh, no, we're back to analogy
back
hell.
on to the Queen Elizabeth under the iceberg with Mary and the Bears. I don't know.
What? Is that a band?
Mary and the Bears. Yeah, they were a
Oh,
band.
a great band. In
oh, you
Chicago.
meant Goldilocks and the Bears.
Oh, it was Goldilocks.
Oh,
That's right. Goldilocks.
Don't you
and the Three
remember your
Bears.
nursery rhymes?
I don't. I never had a nursery.
Oh, now it's okay. We're moving into therapy session.
That's right.
It's therapy time.
All right. Well, for that, then it's nice. Therapy time. Therapy time.
New segment.
Now it's time for therapy time.
And with that,
2 new segments. Analogy hell and therapy time. Love it. Do we have too many or too few? I don't know. In that case, I would like to say thank you, Dean Foster.
Thank you, Tom.
And thank you,
Peterson.
Torrin.
sure thing.
And you know what, Dean?
Oops. Your culture showing.
Smell ya.
Okay, listen, the way to get hold of us is oopscultureshow@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is oopscultureshow. Whether this is the first episode or the third episode or whatever episode that you've listened to, you should really subscribe. That's the best way to go, really, honestly. I know what I'm talking about. All right, so just subscribe through iTunes or through wherever you get your podcasts from. Subscribe. Thank you.